This is now the best open source image generator you can use right now. It's called Z Image, and this has incredible world understanding, plus it can generate super realistic photos, and yes, this can also generate beautiful people and very uncensored stuff. This is also a super efficient model, so you can generate images in just seconds, even on like 4 gigabytes of VRAM or lower. So in this video, I'm going to go over all the cool things that you can do with it, plus I'm going to compare it with the other leading open source image models, including Flux 2 and Qwen Image, and of course I'm going to show you how to download it so you can run it for free and unlimited times offline. Make sure you stick to the end because I'm also going to show you how you can run this with low VRAM. Plus, I'm going to show you how to do image to image so you can take a lousy photo that you made previously and plug it through Z Image to retouch it. And of course, I'm going to show you how to add loras to your workflow so you can generate any style, character, action, or effect you want. Let's jump right in. Alright, so here is their official page. Z Image is by the Tongyi Mai team from Alibaba, which are just absolutely killing it in terms of image and video generation. Here, note that there are two different models. One is Z Image Turbo, which is the image generator, and then Z Image Edit, which is the image editor. Let's go over some examples of Z Image Turbo first. So it can generate some super realistic looking photos, as you can see here. Here are some other examples for your reference. Everything looks very realistic. I mean, it's pretty hard to tell that these were AI generated. Now, this can create very good looking photos in 2K, 3K, or even up to 4K resolution. Although the quality does kind of degrade a bit once you get up to 4K or beyond. And this can absolutely ace skin textures and hands and fingers. Now, in addition to those realistic portrait or scenery photos, this can also render text very well, both in English and in Chinese, so you can easily get it to create posters like this. You can even specify the font and how the text should look within the poster, and this can easily handle different design and art styles. Here are some other examples for your reference. This is just an incredibly powerful and versatile tool if you want to create like social media posts or marketing materials or posters. Notice how diverse and beautiful these examples are. For all these posters, you just have to prompt it. You don't have to like manually design anything or take any photos yourself. This also has an incredible world understanding. It can understand like hundreds of celebrities and existing characters, as I'll show you in a second, plus different locations in the world. So here are just some examples for your reference. Of course, it knows the Great Wall of China, and by the way, this photo looks so realistic. Here are some other examples for your reference, like this looks like a legit photo. And then here's another popular location. I mean, all these photos just look super realistic. They kind of have that photographic graininess to it, which makes it really hard to tell that this was AI generated. And I mean, the details of all of these images are just absolutely incredible. All right, so those were just some quick examples of the Z Image Turbo model, which is text to image. Next, I'm also going to show you some generations from this Z Image Edit model, which allows you to edit existing images using natural language. You can easily change, the hair color of existing characters or the clothes that they're wearing. You can easily change the text as well as, the character from like a duck to a cat. You can change expressions as well as add speech bubbles in the image as well. Or you can change the scene from like summer to winter like this. And notice how good it is at preserving all the details of the original photo. Here's another example where we can change this yam into corn, but it preserves the same style and also the same font. And of course, you can do multiple rounds of editing. So you can change her hair color and her outfit to something like this. And then you can make this character sit at a hotel like this. And then you can also turn it into a watercolor painting like this. Here's another example for your reference. The really awesome thing is this image model is incredibly tiny and efficient. It only has 6 billion parameters, so even like the full official model fits comfortably within like 16 gigabytes of VRAM. There's already some quantized versions, as I'll show you in a second, that can even fit on like less than 4 gigabytes of VRAM. And at least for me, I can generate a photo in less than 10 seconds. That's how fast and efficient this is. Also, one thing to note is that they haven't released the Z Image Edit model yet, so right now we only have access to the text-to-image model, which is called Z Image Turbo. So next, I'm also going to show you some of my generations using Z Image Turbo, and I'm also going to compare it with some other leading open source models. One of them is called Flux Dev, which was just released a day before Z Image, but it's not as good. And then we also have Qwen Image, which was the previous leading image generator. Now, one of the coolest things about Z Image is it has a great world understanding of existing people and characters. For example, I can get Anne Hathaway, Jackie Chan, and Messi at a nightclub. Let's add some harsh flash and make it an amateur low-quality photo. And here's what we got from Z Image. Indeed, it's able to generate all three characters pretty accurately, plus her hand and fingers are also correct. And Jackie Chan actually looks like Jackie Chan. Historically, it's actually very hard for image models to generate Jackie Chan for some reason, but here it pretty much nailed all three characters. Now, if you look at Flux Dev, Anne doesn't look like Anne, Jackie Chan looks completely different, and then even Messi doesn't really look like Messi. So this was a complete fail. And then same with Qwen Image Edit. These two characters do not look like what I specified, plus this isn't even like a low quality photo with a harsh flash, so this one was also a fail. Clearly the point goes to Z Image. By the way, if you're curious on how many people Z Image knows about, here are some images for your reference, and for each cell the user basically prompted it with portrait photo of that person's name. Feel free to pause the video and inspect each person. Some of them look very good, some of them not as good, but as you can see, it has an incredible world understanding of existing people. What's even more impressive is how it's able to cram all this knowledge in just 6 billion parameters. Like, none of the image models even come close to being able to generate all these characters right out of the box. So this is incredibly impressive. Now, in addition to celebrities, let's see if it can also understand some fictional characters. So here's an anime example. Let's get Miku, Nezuko, Gojo, and Sasuke taking a selfie. And as you can see for Z Image, it nailed all the characters. Their faces and outfits do look like the original characters. For Flux Dev, for Nezuko, it's not too bad, although her fingers are all messed up, plus the bamboo is messed up. For Miku, it got her face and hair correct, but her outfit is wrong. And then this is not Gojo, this is not Sasuke, so that's a complete fail. And then who the hell is this? And then we have Qwen Image. It could get Miku correct, but for the other characters, they kind of messed up the outfits pretty badly. Especially Gojo with the eye here, that looks horrible. And then this doesn't even look like Sasuke, nor does this really look like Nezuko. So overall, not great. Again, the point clearly goes to Z Image. Now, like I said, Z Image is great for doing uncensored stuff right out of the box. Of course, I can't show any of this on YouTube, so here's a safe example. And then here I also wanted to see if it can understand some Disney characters. So the prompt is a realistic amateur photo of Snow White and Elsa wearing bikinis, their tongues sticking out, hugging each other in a subway train. And as you can see for Z Image, it's really good. It looks super realistic. This does look like a real photo of, Snow White and Elsa in bikinis. The facial expressions and the body postures are all really natural and dynamic. If you look at Flux Dev, it kind of has that plastic polished vibe to it that you get with the previous Flux versions, so this is not great. I mean, if you compare this with Z Image, at least for me, I would prefer Z Image. And then for Qwen Image, it's not even generating a realistic photo of these two, so that's a fail. So at least for me, the point goes to Z Image. Alright, next let's test its understanding on a very tricky prompt with a lot of text. So the prompt is a cozy bakery window with a wooden sign reading "Freshly Baked Today" in cursive Pacifico font. Below, a chalkboard lists croissants, $2.50, sourdough loaf, $5, cupcakes, $3 each. A poster advertises baking workshop Sunday 10 a.m. with a rolling pin graphic. And then we have 4 pastries, a chocolate eclair, blueberry muffin, cinnamon roll, and almond croissant. Here's the generation from Z Image, and it pretty much nailed it. There's nothing wrong with it. The text looks completely correct, and it's able to generate all the elements that I specified in the prompt. Very impressive. here is Flux 2 Dev's generation. It got all the text correct. However, the pastries do look kind of fake and weird. It just doesn't look realistic. Same with this croissant here. The shape is all messed up. So not as good as Z Image. And then for Qwen Image Edit, it's also able to get all the text and the elements correct. But again, it seems like these pastries look kind of fake and clearly AI generated. Whereas if you look at Z Image, these pastries look a lot more realistic. Plus, the croissant from Qwen Image is missing almonds. So again, the point here has to go to Z Image. It's the most realistic with pretty much no flaws. Next, let's test how good it is at creating some character design sheets. So we have a female, long white hair, blue eyes, black cami, bare shoulders, white kimono, carrying a glowing red sword. Make a model sheet showing the character in 3 consistent views, front, side, and back view. Here's what I got from Z Image. All the details look correct to me. It is the same character consistently across these 3 views. Hard to find any flaws with this. Here is Flux 2 Dev's generation. The quality isn't as good, plus here she has 2 arms. The hands and fingers are also kind of messed up. And then here's the generation from Qwen Image. I really like the design of this one, but again, it's not really consistent. For example, there should be a red ribbon here, but it's missing over here. And then somehow for the back view, there's some red strap over here, but I don't see this in the front and side view. So it's not really consistent across all 3 views. Whereas if you look at Z Image, the character does remain consistent across the views. Next, let's test how good it is at generating posters with text. So here's a poster for Holiday Cookie Swap and Bake Off. It should have a large cookie tin overflowing with decorated sugar cookies and gingerbread men. It should have a curved title along the top of the tin with the text Holiday Cookie Swap and Bake Off, Sunday, December 15th, at this time and this location. Plus, there should be a footer featuring sponsor logos. Here's what we got from Z Image. We do have a cookie tin with some Christmas cookies, and the title is also curved along the top of the tin. The text is also correct with the right location, plus we do have some sponsored logos at the bottom. The only flaw here is that the sponsored logos are kind of gibberish, but that's because I haven't explicitly specified what logos to put. Other than the logos though, this looks like a very nice design. You can see the font and the colors are all aligned throughout this poster. Here's the generation from Flux 2. Already you can see some errors in the text. For example, over here, the Christmas cookies are also kind of messed up over here, plus the text is gibberish over here, and also the logos are gibberish. So it doesn't look as good or consistent as Z Image. And then here is the generation from Qwen Image Edit. I actually like this the most. It does have, more of that holiday spirit. The title looks beautiful. The cookie tin also looks beautiful. The text is all correct. Plus, it does give me some logos at the bottom. So I don't know. In this case, it would have to be a tie between Z Image and Qwen Image. But let me know in the comments which one you prefer. Next, let's test its ability to generate some tricky expressions and hand gestures. So here we have a woman taking a selfie in a cafe. She's doing a cute expression with pursed lips, and she's also winking, and one hand is doing a peace sign. It's going to be an irregular angle, amateur, low quality photo. And here's what we got from Z Image, and this looks beautiful. She is winking, she is doing those pursed lips, plus doing the victory sign. And it's an amateur photo at an irregular angle. I mean, if you just look at this photo, it's really hard to tell this was AI generated. You can easily create like an Instagram influencer page or an OnlyFans with all these cute photos and monetize it like hell. Here's the same prompt with Flux 2. It got most of the elements correct, but her wink is kind of weird. And then for Qwen, this is not bad, but this looks way too cinematic and perfect. Like this should be a low quality, casual, amateur photo. So again, in this instance, I would have to give the point to Z Image. Now here's another strength of Z Image that I haven't heard people talk about a lot. It's actually really good at generating wildlife photos. So here my prompt is a fish eye photo because I also want to test its ability to handle different camera perspectives. And then it's going to be of a sloth hanging upside down from a branch in the rainforest. And here's what I got from Z Image. This looks like a legit fish eye photo of a sloth. This looks really nice and realistic. For Flux 2 Dev, immediately you can see that this looks way too cartoony. This is not a realistic photo. The colors are also way too saturated. And then here we have Qwen Image. The colors aren't as bad, but again, it looks way too plasticky. Definitely not as realistic if you compare this with Z Image. So here, again, the point clearly goes to Z Image. Next, let's test its ability to understand some really tricky prompts. So here we have a ballerina practicing spins in a studio with mirrored walls, and bar equipment scattered with point shoes and sheet music. A rabbit watches atop a grand piano. Outside the large window, an elephant balances on a circus ball. So here we do have a ballerina practicing spins. The floor is scattered with shoes and sheet music. We do have a rabbit on a grand piano, although one flaw is it's sitting on the bench and not on the grand piano. And then we do have an elephant outside balancing on a circus ball. For the most part, this looks pretty good. Here is the generation from Flux to Dev. You can see, first of all, her hand is messed up over here, plus this is not a grand piano, plus the elephant and the ball are not outside the window. There's a lot more noticeable errors with this generation. And then for Qwen Image, again, this doesn't really look like a grand piano. There's no sheet music scattered on the floor, and it doesn't look like the elephant and the ball are outside the window. So again, Z Image is the winner. Really impressive. Next, for research purposes, of course, let's also test how good it is at human anatomy. So here we have a woman sitting and showing her palms and soles of feet. For Z Image, it's indeed a woman sitting showing her palms and feet. And the palms and feet all look correct and very realistic. Here is Flux 2 Dev's generation, and I mean, it got all the elements correct, but this just looks too perfect and polished. Like, if you see this photo, you can probably tell that it's AI generated. And then here's the generation from Qwen Image. It's kind of the same thing. It got nothing wrong, but you can clearly tell that this was an AI generated photo. The colors are too saturated. Everything just looks too plastic. So again, in terms of like realism, I would have to give the point to Z Image. Here's another really tricky prompt that none of the other open source models have gotten correct so far. Here we have a woman doing a handstand. One leg is bent and the other is extended. For Z Image, it absolutely nailed it. Even like the feet and the toes are correct. They should be pointing in this direction. This looks really good. For Flux 2 Dev, you can see that this leg is completely messed up, plus even the knee and the foot here are not in the right direction. For Qwen Image Edit, it's the same thing, so the knees and the feet are completely in reverse. This is not anatomically correct. So here, the point clearly goes to Z Image. It's the only one that was able to actually get this correct. Let's test its ability to generate some different art styles. So here's a minimalist Chinese watercolor painting of a tiger in a forest. And I mean, look at how beautiful the generation from Z Image is. Especially these like brush strokes on these trees. This looks exactly like a Chinese watercolor painting. Even the tiger looks very nice. Now, if you look at Flux 2 Dev, notice that everything looks too perfect. This looks kind of cartoony. And then here's the generation from Qwen Image. It's actually not bad, like the trees and the bamboo, and even the tiger do look a bit better than Flux 2 Dev, plus it even decided to add some text over here, which is actually correct. This stands for like the king of the forest. But I mean, in terms of the artistic style of this, if you compare this with Z Image, this just looks way better. Like for Chinese paintings, the brushstrokes should look more like this. It's kind of casual and messy like this. So at least for me, I would have to choose Z Image for this one. Next, I wanted to see how good it is at generating some really complex scenes with a lot of elements. So here we have a busy, crowded marketplace with lots of stalls, items, and people. Here's what I got from Z Image. If we look close, it's actually quite hard to spot any flaws with this. Like all the people actually look intact and coherent. This is really nice and detailed. Here's the generation from Flux 2 Dev, and as soon as you get it to generate a ton of people in a really messy scene, then you get a lot of noise and artifacts for some reason. And then here's the generation from Qwen Image. This is not bad, but if you really zoom in and look at the details, there's a lot of artifacts within the crowd. Plus, everything just looks too plastic. Definitely not as realistic, especially if you compare it with Z Image. So again, in terms of realism, quality, and the least amount of errors, I would have to give the point to Z Image. Next, let's see if it can generate some really long text. So we have a hand holding a pen writing in a diary. On the page it says, this is quite a long piece of text, much longer than what typical AI models could generate accurately. This is a test to see if all the text will show up correctly here. And also, remember to subscribe to my channel. So here's what we got from Z Image. This does look like handwritten text, and the text mostly looks correct except for over here, where the word also repeats twice. Here is Flux 2 Dev's generation. This doesn't even look like handwritten text, and there are misspellings everywhere, like over here and over here. And then for Qwen Image, again, there are errors within the text. Over here and here and here, it's just gibberish or it keeps repeating some text. So overall, none of them aced it, but in terms of having the least amount of errors, again, the point goes to Z Image. Next, I also wanted to see if it can generate some manga. So here's a manga page with multiple panels showing a fight between Goku and Frieza. I didn't explicitly tell it what to generate for each panel. The creativity is up to it. So here's what I got from Z Image. Most of this text is just gibberish. This does look like Goku and Frieza, but they're not really fighting. And then for some reason, his wristband here is colored, which is not good. And then here is Flux 2 Dev's generation. It does look like they are kind of fighting, so there's more action than Z Image, but the text is messed up and the hands and fingers are all messed up, especially if you look at Frieza. Plus Frieza is colored, which is not good. Here, his face is kind of messed up. There's just noticeably more errors with this generation compared to Z Image. And then here is Qwen Image's generation. Again, this looks kind of awful. There's just way too many errors in this generation. Honestly, none of these could get this prompt well. So I would have to say it's a fail for all three. Alright, so that sums up some of my quick tests on what Z Image can and cannot do. As you can see, across the board, it basically destroys the other two leading image models. It's especially good with handling tricky prompts, different art styles, anatomy, and realism. Plus, it has an incredible world understanding, so you can generate like existing people or fictional characters, and it also handles expressions and poses very well. Alright, next let's go over how you can use Z Image. On my channel, I featured so many different AI models and tools, it can be very overwhelming. What if you can use all of these models all in one platform? And that brings us to ChatLLM by Abacus AI, the sponsor of this video. ChatLLM is an all-in-one platform for you to use the best AI models out there. You can seamlessly switch between different models in your chats. Plus, you can also use all the top image generators out there, as well as the top video models out there, all in one integrated platform. And they're usually very quick to add a model to their site once it comes out. Plus, if you're coding something, they have a really useful artifacts feature so that you can preview your generation side by side. Plus, they have a deep agent feature which can do some really complex tasks all autonomously, like creating PowerPoints, websites, and research reports. It's gonna supercharge your productivity. Best of all, you can access all of these AI models and image and video generators and Deep Agent for only $10 a month. This is way cheaper than if you paid for each tool separately. Definitely check out ChatLLM that comes with Deep Agent in the description below. Just a reminder, it's important to note that right now we only have Z Image Turbo, which is the text-to-image generator. We don't have Z Image Edit yet, which is the image editor where you can edit an existing image using natural language like Nano Banana or Qwen Image Edit. That's expected to be released soon. Next, let's go over how and where you can use Z Image Turbo. So I'll link to this official GitHub page, and if you don't have enough VRAM or if you just want to test this out online, they've already released a free Hugging Face space for you to try this out. So it's just this button here, which takes you to this page, and here is where you can generate images for free online. So here's where you would enter a prompt. Let's try something like this. And then here's where you would choose the resolution and aspect ratio. Here's the starting point of random noise. So generally I would set this to random. So if you generate this again with the same prompt, you'll get a slightly different photo. And then for these values, I just tend to leave it at the default. I'll talk more about this shift value in a second. But next, let's click generate. And as you can see, I'm just on the free plan and this is super quick. This takes like only 6 seconds to generate a photo. And here's what we get. Here's indeed a super realistic photo of a minimalist, cozy room. Definitely try this out. It's completely free for you to use. Hugging Face gives you some free daily credits, so this allows you to generate like a dozen images per day. Now, in addition to Hugging Face, of course, the awesome thing about Z Image is they've already released the model for you to download and run offline on your computer. So you can use it for free and unlimited times. You can customize it however you want, and you can generate some uncensored stuff. So next, let's go over how to install Z Image. One of the easiest and most most intuitive ways to use Z-Image is using ComfyUI, which is the interface you're seeing here. If you haven't heard of ComfyUI, this is the most popular platform for running open source image, video, and audio generators locally. In fact, if you're new to ComfyUI, definitely see this video first where I go over how to install and use it. But anyways, back to this Z-Image video, this assumes you already have ComfyUI installed. The nice thing about ComfyUI is you don't need to create all these nodes and noodles from scratch. You can just drag and drop a pre-built template onto your interface. Now, the nice thing is there's already an official ComfyUI workflow for Z-Image, which looks like this. So I'll link to this workflow file in the description below, and all you need to do is click on this button to download the JSON file. Now you can save this wherever you want. I'm just gonna save it in my ComfyUI folder. All right, and then afterwards, let's go ahead and open up ComfyUI. After you load this up, the first thing you need to do is click on Manager and then click Update ComfyUI, because you do need the latest version to support Z-Image. All right, afterwards, let's press Restart and then click Confirm. After restarting and updating to the latest version, all we need to do is take our downloaded JSON file and drag and drop it onto our interface. So you can see here, everything is pre-built for you already, and it's actually very simple. Now, before we get started with the workflow, first we need to download a few models. So on this card, this contains all the links to the models that you need to download. Let's first click on this Qwen 4B, and this goes in ComfyUI, in Models, and then text encoders. Note that this file is around 7.5 gigabytes in size. And then afterwards, let's click on this one to download the Z-Image model. And this goes in ComfyUI, in Models, and then Diffusion Models. Notice that this one is 11.4 gigabytes in size. So this can definitely fit within like 12 gigabytes of VRAM or even lower with some offloading. And then finally, we also need this ae.safetensors file. So let's click on this. And this goes in ComfyUI, in Models, and then VAE. Notice that this one is only around 300 megabytes in size. All right, now after downloading all those models, that's basically all you need to get started. So let's press R to refresh our models list. And then next, let's go over this workflow. So step one is to load the models. So let's click on each dropdown and select the model that we just downloaded. So for this one, I'm going to select Z-Image Turbo. And then for the text encoder, I'm going to select Qwen 4B. And then for the VAE, I'm going to select this one. And then step two, here is where you would specify the width and the height of your image. Now you could generate like higher resolution images from this up to like 2K or 3K or even 4K. I find that it tends to generate great looking images, even up to like 2048 by 2048. But if you go higher than that, then the quality does start to degrade a bit. And you're really going to push its limits if you try to generate 4K images. For us, let's just leave it at this default value for now. And here the batch size is basically how many images you want to generate at once. And then over here is where you would enter your prompt describing what you want to generate. Pretty simple. And then over here is the shift value. Now this shift value is actually quite interesting. So I played around with this a bit, and the default shift value of this workflow is 3. If you lower the shift value to something like 1, then the contrast and the detail seems to be a lot higher. Whereas if you set the shift value to something like 6, then it seems to be softer with less detail. But feel free to play around with this shift value yourself and see how it affects your image. And then finally, your prompt and the resolution will be plugged into here to generate the image. So here we have the number of steps it takes to generate the image. The more steps you have, the longer it will take, but the higher quality it will be, and vice versa. It seems like the sweet spot is 8 to 10 steps, but again, feel free to play around with it. If you set the step count to like 4 to 6, it does generate faster and the image tends to be softer in details with more noise. If you increase the step count to something above 10, then it can slightly improve sharpness, but sometimes it makes it too sharp. And then for CFG, this is basically how literally you want the AI to follow your prompt. Now, Z-Image Turbo is specifically designed to work within the range of a CFG of 1, Whereas for Stable Diffusion, you can often set the CFG to something super high, like 6 or even 10. Notice that for Z-Image Edit, often if you go above 3, then it's already going to mess up your image. Now, the CFG is basically how literally the AI should follow your prompt. So if you want to generate a lot of text in your image and you want to make sure it gets the text 100% correct, then you can try to increase the CFG slightly to like 1 point something or 2. Also, if you increase the CFG, it tends to saturate the colors a bit. And then if you want like some softer or less saturated images, then sometimes a lower CFG of like 0.5 to 1 can actually give you that result. Again, feel free to play around with this until you find the optimum combination for your use case. Also, you might have noticed that here, there's not really any negative prompt. And that's because with a CFG of 1, it basically ignores your negative prompt. And then next we have sampler name and scheduler. This is basically the algorithm that's used to generate the image. Now, the default one that they have here is already pretty good, so I just tend to leave it at this. However, if you want to generate images of more variation from the same prompt, then some people say that you should use Euler with DDIM uniform. But again, this is up to you. I'm just going to leave it at the default of this res multi-step and simple. And that's pretty much it. So let's click run and you can see it's proceeding to load these models into my memory. And here's the result. This was super quick. This only took like 14 seconds on my GPU with 16 gigabytes of VRAM. Also note that this is a save image node, so it's automatically saved in your ComfyUI output folder, as you can see here. So in a nutshell, that's how you can use the official Z-Image Turbo model locally on your computer for unlimited times. Now, one thing to note is that this official Z-Image Turbo model is around like 11 gigabytes in size, so if you don't have enough VRAM to fit this model, then this section is for you. Fortunately, there's already some quantized or compressed versions of Z-Image Turbo that can fit comfortably with as low as 4 gigabytes of VRAM. So this is super efficient. I'll link to this page in the description below where this user has created a ton of different compressed models. So let's click on Files and Versions. And here you can see a list of different compressed models of different sizes. For example, the smallest model is this Q3 Small GGUF, which is only 3.79 gigabytes in size. This can fit comfortably within a GPU with only 4 gigabytes of VRAM. So next I'm going to go over how you can download and run these GGUFs. So first, let's download this example workflow file. So I'm going to click here. You can save this wherever you want. For me, I'm just going to call it Z-Image GGUF. All right. And then afterwards, going back to our interface, I'm just going to drag and drop this JSON file onto my interface. And here's what we get. Now, the next step we need to do is download one of these GGUFs. So I'm going to choose this one, this Q4 Medium GGUF, which is around 5 gigabytes in size. So let me click download. And this goes in ComfyUI, in models, and then in UNet. Let's click save. All right, now afterwards, going back to our interface, there's one more thing we need to download, which is this quantized text encoder. So let's click on this. And here, again, it contains a ton of different compressed text encoders. Now for me, because I downloaded the Q4 Medium model, let's look for Q4 Medium, which is over here. And let's download this one, which is 2.5 gigabytes in size. And this goes in ComfyUI, in models, and then text encoders. And that's basically all the models you need to get started. Now, once you load up this workflow, you might see these GGUF nodes highlighted in red, which means you haven't downloaded them yet. So what you need to do is click on Manager, and then click on Custom Nodes Manager, and then at the top here, search for GGUF. And what you need to do is download this ComfyUI GGUF. In fact, if you have it already, it also wouldn't hurt to update this to the latest version. So let's click on this, and then click Restart. Afterwards, let's go over this GGUF workflow. So here is where you would click on the dropdown and select the GGUF you just downloaded. And then over here is where you would select the quantized text encoder, which you just downloaded, which for me is this one. And then here's where you would enter a positive prompt and the negative prompt. But I don't think Z-Image actually needs a negative prompt. So let's try a prompt like this. And then here is where you would set the width and height of your image. Again, this can go up to like 6 megapixel resolutions without affecting image quality. This can definitely do like really high resolution images. But for me, let's just keep it quick and small. So I'm just going to do 1024 by 1024. And then over here is the K sampler, which has the same settings as before. And that's pretty much it. Let's click run. All right, and here's what we get. Very impressive considering this is a super compressed and quantized version. So in a nutshell, that is how you can use Z-Image Turbo even if you have like 4 gigabytes of VRAM. Next, let's also go over how to do image to image. In other words, how can we input one image and get Z-Image Turbo to edit it slightly or to add more details? They don't have an official workflow for this, but we can already tweak this to incorporate an input image. So here's what we need to do. We basically need to replace this latent image node with your uploaded image. So let me double click anywhere on the interface and then type in load image and then select this one. So here is where we would upload the image to use. So for example, let me choose this image. Now, we can't just drag this image node and connect it to the K-sampler. What we need to do is first double click here and then use this VAE encode node first. So let me click on this and then connect this load image node through here. So this basically uses your VAE to convert this image into what is called latent space. And by the way, we also need to connect the VAE, which we have over here. So let's also drag a noodle here and connect it to the VAE node. And then afterwards, we can connect this latent to the K-sampler. Notice that when I do that, it will automatically disconnect this one. In fact, let me click on this and then click on this button or Control B to disable or bypass this. All right, and then afterwards, let's enter a prompt to convert this into a realistic photo instead of just this 3D animation. So let's write something like realistic cinematic photo of a Chinese girl in a pink hanfu talking. Basically, we just need to roughly describe the image. And then afterwards, here, the only thing we need to tweak is this denoise setting. What this means is how much of this original image do we want to edit out? Now, initially, when we used this text-to-image workflow and we loaded this latent image node, this basically generates a frame of random noise. So we want to edit out 100% of that random noise and turn it into our prompt. But here, since we're uploading a reference image as the input, we don't want to, completely remove 100% of this. We want some of this image to influence our final generation. So basically, this denoise value is like how much influence you want this original image to have. A lower value would have higher influence. A higher value would give it more room to change this image a lot more. So for us, let's try something like 0.5, and then let me press run and see what that gives us. The awesome thing about this is everything just works. I can just tweak this workflow to convert this into image to image. All right, now as you can see here, it still has that 3D animation face. So it seems like this image has too much influence. So let me increase this value further to something like 0.8 and see if that's any better. And let's see if it can convert this into a more realistic face. And here we go. If we set this to like 0.8, here is what we get. By the way, this is like super quick. Like I'm generating these images in like 7 to 8 seconds. So let me drag this original image over and expand this a bit so you can compare the two generations side by side. So in a nutshell, that is how you can do image to image using Z-Image Edit. You can convert a previously shitty generation with Stable Diffusion and plug it through Z-Image to make it even better. Or you can kind of convert an anime or Disney Pixar scene into a realistic photo like this, or vice versa. Note that this is just basic image to image, so you can kind of use Z-Image Turbo to retouch an existing image. But this is not like an image editor. Remember, I mentioned there's going to be another model coming soon called Z-Image Edit, which allows you to actually edit images using natural language, kind of like Nano Banana and Qwen Image Edit. That has not been released yet, so keep that in mind. Now, the biggest advantage of these open source image models is that people can fine-tune it with their own datasets and create what are called loras. These are basically smaller, fine-tuned models which you can add on top of your workflow to specifically generate a certain thing. This could be a specific art style, or a specific character, like this, or a specific pose or action or effect. And this is, of course, really useful for uncensored stuff. Now, of course, on YouTube, I can't show you any of this, but if you go on Civit AI and you turn off all the filters, there's going to be a ton of uncensored loras for Z-Image involving any position or fetish or action you can think of. Like, it's wild. So next, I'm going to show you how you can add a lora to your workflow to generate something specific. For us, let's just go with this one, Commodore 64 style pixel art. So I'm going to click on this and then click download over here. And this goes in ComfyUI, in models, and then in loras. Let's click save. Now afterwards, going back to our default Z image workflow, what we need to do is basically insert a LoRa node after this load diffusion model node. So let's double click anywhere on the interface, and then I'm going to search for LoRa, and then we are going to select LoRa loader model only. And then let's press R to refresh the model list because I've just downloaded a new LoRa. And then down here is where you can select the LoRa that you want to use. And then over here, this basically determines the strength of the LoRa or how much influence the LoRa should have on your generation. So let's set this to something like 0.8 or 80%. And then next, all we need to do is connect this diffusion model over here and then connect this node over here so that this is now in between this node and this node. And that's pretty much it. So for the prompt, let's do something simple like camping on the lakeside. Now there's one more thing we need to do. Going back to the page for this LoRa, most of the time, in order to actually trigger the LoRa, you need to use a trigger word. And here it says the trigger word is this, C64 style pixel art. So I'm just gonna copy this and then paste it in here. And that's pretty much it. Let's click run. And here's what we get. Perfect. So here's how you can load any LoRa into your workflow. And to load multiple LoRas, you can just string multiple LoRa nodes together. So for example, if I want to add another LoRa, I can just double click anywhere again and then search for LoRa and then insert this node and then put this in between these two nodes like this. And then here I can select another LoRa, for example, and that's how you can add multiple LoRas into your workflow. All right, so that sums up how you can download and use Z Image Turbo on your computer for free and unlimited times. This is so fast, like for me, I can generate a photo in just a few seconds. The GGUFs that I showed you can easily fit within 4 GB of VRAM or lower. This is very accessible, the quality is amazing and super realistic, and you can do uncensored stuff. This is definitely the best open source image model you can use right now. Anyways, that sums up my review and tutorial of Z Image. Let me know what you think of this and what other impressive things were you able to generate from this. Also, if you run into any errors during the installation, welcome to paste the error message in the comments below and I'll try to help you troubleshoot as much as possible. Also, once they release Z Image Edit, which is the image editor, I'll definitely do a full review and tutorial on that as well, so stay tuned. As always, I will be on the lookout for the top AI news and tools to share with you. So if you enjoyed this video, remember to like, share, subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. Also, there's just so much happening in the world of AI every week. I can't possibly cover everything on my YouTube channel. So to really stay up to date with all that's going on in AI, be sure to subscribe to my free weekly newsletter. The link to that will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.